All right, Molo Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Good evening, Renaat Mensah, and welcome to an episode of the Big Daddy Liberty Show, the final one for the week. A reminder to you, as I did on Monday, that this week I'm chatting to heads of organizations, guys who really I will be meeting with soon enough to chat about how we can work together. 2023 has to be a different year. It has to be the year that you and I, the faith, flag, family, and freedom type South African becomes the loudest voice in the room. And to do that, we've got to work together. We've got to be the sort of people who push our conservative or libertarian ideals into society. But hey, let me not waffle away here. Let me just quickly remind you that if you're watching the show, do me a big favor, please. Hit that like button. Yes, that's right. Whether you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube. And if you're watching on YouTube in particular, subscribe, please, to the channel. Help me grow my numbers as we march to 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And remember, we have a website. Find us at bigdaddyliberty.com. There, of course, you can also pledge your support towards the work that we do. As I said, 2023 is a big year for me. I'm looking to travel around this country advocating for those liberty ideas, going into our dorpies, our townships and rural areas, talking to people about the ideas that I argue are much better for South Africa, the ideas that actually create a prosperous, property-owning, free and non-racial society. Don't you want that kind of society? I know I do. But anyway, let me not waffle away. Let me bring my guest for the week, the final guest for the week. We've run the gauntlet this week. We had the IRR, we had the Free Market Foundation, Solidarity. Tonight, we speak to an organization that does really big things. I'm talking, of course, about Afriforum. That's right, Afriforum. I'm speaking to Kallie Kriel, who, of course, is the CEO of Afriforum. Kallie, good evening.
Hello, Sishle. Good evening to you. It's a privilege speaking to you. You're a person that does great work. And I'm glad to hear in your intro that you are more than willing to work with us. From our side, we are also more than willing to work with you and the organizations you've mentioned, but actually work with everybody that wants to create a better future for our communities, but also for those that come after us.
Absolutely. And indeed, those are the two areas or the two people that we do this for, isn't it? It's our families, first and foremost, and our communities, the very people who, unfortunately, are on the receiving end of the worst ideas, the worst policies by our political elites in this country. Now, we'll get into that in a moment. But before we do any of that, there very well may be some people who are saying, Afriforum, who are they? Or worse yet, have a misguided view of who Afriforum, based on what the mainstream media in this country often paint you as. But I think it is important to hear from you directly. Kallie, via Afriforum.
Yes, maybe I should start off by just saying where we started, because today we're a different organization that we were 16 years ago. 16 years ago, well, it's actually now 17 years ago, in 2006, we experienced the problem that Afrikaners became very dependent on government during the previous dispensation. And because before the apartheid system, you had, after the second Anglo-Boer War, you had a situation where Afrikaners became self-reliant and community dependent. But then they became government reliant. And when, of course, government changed, and it was a government, let's put it lightly, that's not very positive about Afrikaners and minorities and culture as such, not very positive about that. So we had to revive and go back to our roots. But first we had to get people away from apathy, because we saw, and unfortunately we're still seeing, a lot of people from minority communities that have left the country. And we said, no, well, we believe our future is here on the southern tip of Africa. And our first step was to say we just needed to create a voice that also takes on the issue of minorities, but a voice that is not isolated or an island, but a voice that we believe would be in the interest of all, but does not hesitate to say we also take on issues that are of importance to Afrikaners and minorities. And firstly, we just started to be as a civil rights organization, taking on issues such as corruption, such as the disrespect for Afrikaans language and a number of other issues. But of course, that was just to get our organization started. At that stage, we had no members. We had 3 staff members. And our first priority was just to get the name, and it was a new brand. So we needed to get the name Afriforum known. And we also had little money to do it. So that was about a process of growing of about 5 years. And we have made our first breakthrough with a campaign against Nestlé when they started buying milk from a farm that was stolen by Grace Mugabe. And we were only 3 people. It's actually, if you look back, it's ludicrous to say you're now going to take on a multinational company. But that is what you do if you're youthful. You don't realize what you take on. And of course, that campaign of ours, we got huge international support. And Nestlé then said, well, okay, they're going to stop buying. And I remember the news coming in that Nestlé bowing before Afriforum. It made us look as if we were huge, even because this multinational company bowed before us. So that was the start. But then it started gaining momentum because we got more members, so we could start appointing the best legal teams. And as we've grown, we've built our capacity. So it was a long journey. But we also now realize that Afriforum should be much more than just a civil rights initiative that fights for civil rights. It's important to fight for what is right. It is important to fight corruption. But in the end, our families deserve better than just to fight. We need to create alternatives where we don't necessarily have to fight. But of course, we will have to fight to keep those alternatives in place. So we have our slogan is fight and build. And what has now happened over the years, people might not know that, because the fight part where you go to court and you run a campaign, you're putting international pressure on government, those are the ones that gets a lot of publicity. But actually 80% of our funds and time and energy go into community federalism. And that is to say, we must be a organization that does things. And the best way, for instance, if I can give you an example, we put pressure on the South African government and the police. You'll remember Ernst Roots and I went to the US with regard to the issue of farm murders, with regard to expropriation without compensation and all those kind of things. And that is important. But in the end, the police has not really improved. In fact, under the leadership of Becky Cele, it's actually gone backwards. So then we will, of course, continue fighting that cause. But the best alternative is simply to set up your own safety structures. It's legal. It's within the framework of the law. And you can get all the good people in communities that say, we want to keep our families safe, we want to keep our community safe, and you can get those people. Hopefully, in most cases, we are able to cooperate with the police. But of course, if it's not possible, we'll still work within the framework of the law, and that is the way to go. We've got 165 of those. So. And, well, I don't want to just continue speaking on everything we do, but just the core of this is we're fighting for civil rights, but then we want to build strong, self-reliant communities that is not reliant on government, and where if government fails, communities should not fail because they take their future into their own hands.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I allowed your opening statement because, again, it was rich. Insofar as explaining the importance of the work you do. It has that twin prong, isn't it? It is the fight element, which is important, pushing back against bad policies, bad ideas, and indeed the dogma that characterizes South Africa of the big state, big politicians, and big spending that crowds out people like you and me. Of course, you've got to do that. But also that other side is the building side. And the key word here was community federalism. Now, this is a word people who have watched the show have heard before. We heard it on Tuesday when we spoke to Derek Herman of Solidariteit. And we made this point quite big insofar as saying, you are not going to be saved by anybody other than yourself and your community. You've got to build structures that are local, that serve you and your family, and people resonate with that message. That is the future of South Africa. So let me do this, Kallie. Let me unpack this. And in doing so, let me help chart the growth of an office that initially had only 3 people in it to now being an organization with 300,000 plus members and growing. Thank you, God, by the way, for that. Because it's South Africans basically saying we recognize the importance of organizations like Afriforum and beyond that, of the work it does. Let me put the work that you guys do on screen. Give me a second here, Kallie. It'll take a moment. This is, of course, from the Afriforum website. Let me just do this properly. Look at all of these tabs, people. These are all initiatives that, of course, that Afriforum is busy with, that speaks to, if you will, that building ethos. You know what? Let me do this. I speak a lot, Kallie, about the Mazakele ethos, which is a Zulu word for build it yourself. You guys perhaps exemplify that. A hashtag on self, as Solidarity says, type mentality. Tell me why that's important, Kallie. And as you do so, I'm going to pick 2 or 3 of these tabs for you to talk to us about what they are and their importance.
Okay, well, I think it's simply, in the first place, we don't have any alternative. We can look at the moment at the centralistic dispensation we have with the ANC government. Unfortunately, we can save time. We don't have to explain to people that it has failed dismally. That we know Eskom, SAA, municipalities, water infrastructure, electricity, municipalities that don't get clean audits. So it's failed dismally. So we can say then we need an alternative. And if you have a centralistic state and the government, and we have a kakistocracy, and there's really a word like that, let me say it in Afrikaans, a kakistocracy. And people can go and look in their dictionaries. It simply means a government by the worst people available to a nation. And if you have that and you have a centralistic state, it will move downwards in a sense that everything will fail. But if you say, no, we want to have a bottom-up approach rather than a top-down approach, you are able to utilize the energy, the skills, the know-how that are within communities. And of course, if you look at the centralistic state, somebody in Pretoria does not really know what the needs are of people in Ngoma or places that are far away from the centralistic state. The people of Ngoma knows the best, what is best for them. The people of my neighborhood knows what is best for us. And therefore, why not put it under the control of these people that live in those communities, get the decision-making power to the lowest level? And in terms of federalism, that means a devolution of power. But of course, we know the ANC is against that. But, fortunately, we don't put our future on the decisions of the ANC. We take it into our own hands. So if you start building community federalism, you start doing stuff for yourself. We always say the ANC is not going to say yes to community federalism. And the reason is we're not going to ask them. You don't need permission. As long as you work within the framework of the law and the family flag God people that you've mentioned are people that are law-abiding, people that don't want chaos. But within those frameworks, we're looking at every aspect of that community: education, the the welfare situation within communities. And that is possible, and it's not a pipe dream. I think, what gives me hope, sometimes you just have to pinch yourself to say, is this really true? Because when we started Afriforum, we hoped that we would be able to succeed. When I was involved with Solidarity, we hoped that we would succeed. And fortunately, looking now, if you see a Soltech, if you see some of these programs that you've just put on your screen, we've had mercy from God, but it was also hard work, and it is possible with support of people. So we're thankful that this plan will work. Of course, it's one also has to be humble to say that it's definitely not the solution. We need to do much, much more. But at least it is a good start, and it shows that community federalism works. And we're glad to see, you've mentioned that we have over 310,000 members. We're glad to see that more and more people believe this can work and are willing to fall in and be part of this team that will make sure that this country is safe and prosperous for our families to live in.
Absolutely. Kallie, as we are in the second half of our show, just give me a moment to do a little bit of housekeeping. If you've just joined us, welcome to it. This is the Big Daddy Liberty Show, the final one for this week. I'm in conversation with the CEO of Afriforum. That's right, Afriforum, those guys who do a fantastic work. I know you've probably seen some of their members out and about in maybe your part of the world, either doing security or even filling a pothole, or whatever that they have actually set their minds to better this country. I'm talking to the head honcho over at Afriforum, Kallie Kriel. Welcome to it. Hit that like button and subscribe to the show. Kallie, I want to just spend the next 5 minutes. You've spoken about those two heads, if you will, of Afriforum. The one is the fight head. Let's take a moment to talk about that, because you guys do some great advocacy work, pushing back against really bad ideas from the political elites and really the leftist establishment in this country, who are dead set on that centralized state, where everything is in the control of the state, in the control of politicians and the like. All thought is group thought, is racialized thought, of course. Let's unpack some of the issues you guys have pushed last year, pushed back on last year. Let's talk about expropriation without compensation. Let's talk about farm murders, and let's talk about race-based, and as I like to call it, racist-based legislation in this country. Let's begin on EWC. I think this one is important because it threatens not only, as the politicians would have us believe, oh, it just is the farmers who are worried about it. It's just those white Buddha farmers that are complaining. Actually, it threatens every South African, because if you give a politician the power to confiscate something from you, confiscate property from you, without compensating you for it, i.e. theft, it affects everybody.
Yes, most definitely. And I want to go as far as to say it affects the poor the most, because within our times, people that have funds and have resources can make some kind of a plan in some kind of a way. Of course, it will be harsh on them as well. But if it's not me trying to say that I'm this brilliant economist, it's just you can see the realities. Just look at what happened in Zimbabwe. You have a 90% unemployment rate, and the people, the rich people, were able to relocate and start a new life elsewhere. And you see now the fact that so many people from Zimbabwe want to come over to South Africa. It's because they want to get away from a system where there was expropriation without compensation, and they see a place where it has not happened as a place where there is a better life. And you can look at Venezuela, what we've seen there in South America, one of the great countries that had a strong economy. It was just simply destroyed by Hugo Chavez, who's now the hero of the EFF and the leftists in this country. So we have to continue bringing out that message. We are grateful that, and there, we say that the country cannot only be saved by Afriforum. We see ourselves as a role player that does our best. But I think there was a lot of support and working together of a number of organizations against that. And we're glad that the change of the constitution did not happen. But where we are, in terms of the expropriation bill, I think that will still be a big legal fight lying ahead for us in the next year. Our campaign team have already worked on it. Our legal team is ready for that. So I think that's going to be one of the bigger fights of this coming year in terms of just making sure that the Act does not do what the ANC wanted to do with the Constitution.
And again, it takes me to an associated issue. Firstly, of the crime situation generally in this country. It's absolutely appalling that the ANC has allowed a situation where effectively criminals rule the roost, as the expression goes, in this country. 500,000 people effectively since 1994 murdered in this country. Communities around the country, whether it's suburban areas, township, and of course rural areas in particular, experiencing these sort of high crime rates. And of course our farmers in this country facing this issue in a rather disproportionate way, insofar as farmers are far from any police station. So they're on their own in most cases. And here you have a ANC government that is quite dismissive of the issue. Why is it important, Kallie, for you guys to be the voice for our farming community in this country and really the rural networks?
Well, of course, we want to be a broader voice as well. If you look, there's probably about 30,000 farmers, and we have 310,000 members. So you can imagine if all the farmers are our members, they 10%. But why we believe it is important is because in the first place, there's no other crime where we see it happening in an atmosphere where people, where hate speech is used to spur people on. Just yesterday evening, I saw on Twitter somebody responding to one of my tweets, just saying, "Kill the Boer, we will kill you," those kind of things. So that is, of course, important. The other reason is there's nobody else that takes on the issue. So the fact is that the government is in denial of this crime problem, where in other problems they are not in denial. It needs for us to put a special focus on this, and putting a special focus on something does not mean, as these leftists say falsely, that you see one person's life superior as that of another. We see it all the time. We have 16 days of activism against violence against women and children. We are in full support of that. I think Kriel and his team is actually doing the most work to take on people that abuse women and children, more than what we see government doing. And that can be, it does not mean then you don't take seriously the abuse of men. It's just there's a specific category of crime. And if the government can put on a task team to look after rhinos, a special task team to prevent rhino poaching, then of course you can have a look at farmers. But of course the crime situation in other areas, I spoke about Kriel just now, and it said 95% of the cases that come to him are from black people. People that are despondent. It's the criminal justice system that have failed them. But in terms of farmers, that is a campaign that we will continue doing until you have a situation where government says this is a priority crime, as we've done with rhinos, as we've done with cable theft, as we've done with gang violence. There's a special task team for gang violence. We want that to happen, and government will get cooperation from us. What we're fortunately seeing, even though on government level, you see that the police don't want to cooperate, what we find at least is on police station level, there are still policemen and women that want to do their job well. And especially after one of the things we also do is we set up a private security company called Forum Sekuriteit. And what that also gives drone training to our members, a license for that. And we now have 63 drone pilots. It's still a drop in the ocean, but at least we've got 63 people. And what is great for us on grassroots level, we are able to cooperate with the police because this drone technology also helps them if we make it available to them. Why I'm mentioning drones, I think in terms of security on farms, that is a drive for us to say we need to use the new technology. We need to be on the forefront. And we also have a program called Operasie Klipmuur, where we go onto farms and train farmers and their families, as well as surrounding farms and workers on basic issues on how you can look after farm security. So that's also important, that while we fight, as I've mentioned, to put a spotlight on these problems, we need to make sure on grassroots level that we put in solutions that where people can look after their safety themselves.
Absolutely. And I was going to make the point that in the last sort of 5 minutes we have, Kallie, I really want us to chat here about Afriforum in 2023. What can people expect from this organization? Big campaigns, projects that people can get involved in? Because I know, we're talking about 310,000 plus people. I know there's more, Kallie, who would want to join Afriforum, maybe even people who want to form their own Afriforum of a sort, if you will. But what are the big campaigns to expect from Afriforum in 2023?
Well, we're going to drive the devolution of powers in the Western Cape. We've, together with leading people in the coloured community, we formed the Cape Forum that's going to drive devolution. We want a referendum specifically as a first step to focus on policing, where the policing powers should be devolved to the Western Cape government, to cities, towns, and also to communities in terms of neighbourhood watches. Then, of course, the crime fight what we will step up this year is the training that we have. We have the 3-level training programs for our neighbourhood watches. There's already 10,000 volunteers. We need to make sure that people that take part in neighbourhood watches are disciplined. We're not going to be like the EFF, so training for us is of huge importance. But then another thing that we've started off last year is the energy crisis. We've held with the AAI, together with them, Energy in Daba in Cape Town last year, where we've looked at energy solutions. In the next 2 weeks, we will make public a document that we had a task team draw up, just to give people guidelines on how they can use solar panels at their homes, and also with a list of people that can install it. Because, there are many people that have now become the experts on solar issues, and we need to make sure that people don't lose a lot of money. But then secondly, we work with big private companies that already provide power to some towns. That needs to be stepped up. The one focus would be to put pressure on municipalities to give the municipal electricity network to outsource that to a private company that can also make sure that they get the payment in. And we've already started with discussions, but that is a long-term program, is to have pebble bed technology that we want to bring in. So that is a big issue. Probably in terms of education, we know there's an effort from government to change the Schools Act, where the government now can decide the languages in a school. And we know when government decides the language, they disregard the fact that we have various cultures in this country, and they want to make us all English-speaking people. So Of course, that is going to be a huge court case. And then, of course, service delivery. We've set up a service delivery company, Pioneer. You know that you might have seen last year there was Coaster, the waterworks and sewage works was privately run. It was done by Pioneer, our service delivery company. In the end, the court said, well, the municipality gets the gets the facility back. And then within a week, the water was not working again. So I think the thing we should take a longer stance, and to say to one another, some things are not possible today, but history changes quite quickly, and you need to be prepared for when it is possible. And that's quite hard to say, let's do stuff now, but you can't really implement it now. And that's what we are doing with service delivery. In the end, that we want to do refuge. We need our own fire brigades, because with the collapse of a fire brigade, you can imagine what huge crisis it is. And these things are huge that needs to be done, but we need to start now. And just to say, if 5 years ago somebody said that the private companies would be able to provide electricity, there will not be a cap on how much they can provide, I would have said it's not possible. But the reality of a failing state that you see failures in actually made a president to say we're going to remove that cap. But of course, he said it, but it hasn't happened yet. But we need to prepare for one day to make sure that communities can take up all these services, because government is not going to be able to provide them.
Absolutely. And Kallie, maybe on that rather extensive note, looks like a very busy 2023 on the cards. But as I said, we here at the BDL show will definitely be in full support of not only your initiatives, but also, we'll pitch some things to you guys and see if we can work together, because this is, Kallie, we should make this our year, especially as we head towards an election year next year. If we can convince people, win them on the battle of ideas, I'm pretty sure we can see real change also in the electorate in this country. But hey, I can only hold hope. Kallie, final word from you. How do the folks become members of Afriforum? How do they support you financially?
Yes, you can go to Afriforum's website. There is a join now. And of course, anybody can join. So we don't have any criteria who can join and who can't. It says join now. If you click there, you can easily join. Just a last comment on what you said with regard to cooperation. I think that is the way to go. We've already started also with cooperation between cultural communities. We're proud that last week we and Barolong Buseleka community had our first harvest, or second harvest, in terms of agricultural project. We've got a goat project in the Eastern Cape with the Amabele community. And if you're going to foster this network of cooperation and good relations, those politicians up top that wants to polarize, their effect will be minimized.
Absolutely.
And we would not have to take, I think my last call to people is, if you look at the news, if you become despondent, the problem is that you think our whole future are in the hands of government. But if you change your view to say our future is in our own hands, then of course, I don't enjoy to see how these things go wrong. But I don't become despondent, because I know we have the ability within our communities and the energy to make sure that we can build a future irrespective of what government does.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is the message indeed. That's, of course, Kallie Kriel, the CEO of Afriforum. A big thank you to him, as I say also thank you, dear viewer, for having joined us tonight on this show. Remember, there will be no BDL show tomorrow. That's a Friday. It is my Sabbath. I do not do any work on a Shabbat. But with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this week of the CEOs of these organizations. And you can see why, guys. I want to work with these folks. These are like-minded people. These are people who see the value of us, the God-fearing, law-abiding, and indeed family-orientated South African, empowering that person and not the political elites and not the hobnob well-to-dos in this country. That's the South Africa I want. Anyway, with that being said, thank you for watching. Remember to hit that like button. It does me a world of good, especially if you're watching this on Facebook or on YouTube. On YouTube, subscribe to the channel, and please do me a solid favor, visit us on our website and contribute to the show. A payment method there that suits you, you can find on the website. Now, with that being said, thanks for watching. Now, as I always say at the end of every episode, never trust a commie.